What's going on, everybody? My name is Tristen Jarvis, and today we're going to be talking about a song called Push by Rizzo that just came out. And I play bass with Aaron. I've learned a lot about music from him and a lot about how to play the electric bass. So I wanted to make a video of me performing the song, and afterwards we could break down all the techniques that I use in that song and choices that were made while we were recording. So without further ado, here's Push by Rizzo, and we'll break it down afterwards.
Prescription spilled on the floor. I found a wound from your kiss on my shoulder. Yeah, don't wanna cover up your mess no more. So how can something so damn good be so wrong? Yeah, won't get my hopes way up, 'cause I know this won't last for long. As you push me over the edge, yeah, you push me over the edge. Oh, should've never let you into my bed, 'cause I can't get you out of my head now. As you push me over the edge, don't come searching for shelter. I'm not the love that you so desperately need. You're making quite the mountain out of this molehill. Up in an atmosphere too thin to breathe in. So how can feeling love this could be so wrong? You used to have a heart, but that thing sure as hell is gone. And you push me over the edge. Yeah, you push me over the edge. Oh, I should've never let you into my bed, 'cause I can't get you out of my head now. And you push me over the edge. If I don't see you, I can be strong. But if you show your face, you know my strength won't last for long. As you push me over the edge, yeah, you push me over the edge. Oh, I should've never let you into my bed, 'cause I can't get you out of my head. And you push me over the edge. Yeah, you push me over the edge. Oh yeah, you push me over the edge. Oh, I should've never let you into my bed, 'cause I cannot get you out of my head. And you push me over the edge.
All right, that was Push by Rizzo, and let's break it down a little bit. So, the bass, even though I had it boosted in my playthrough, it still has a really, really prominent role in the tune. For that reason, it was really important before recording that we had to identify and really execute all of our desired textures and our techniques that we needed to use and our gear and everything. So let's just go through it. Let's talk about some gear really quickly. We recorded at Bunker Studio in Brooklyn, New York. Tremendously good space. We worked with a great engineer named Todd Carter. He did an unbelievable job on this tune. And yeah, so we were at Bunker, and I brought along my, I have a 5-string Carvin active bass, but for most of Aaron's stuff, that's really becoming not the vibe. It's pretty evident that if you listen to Aaron's music and through rehearsals with him, he really conceives of his music being played with like a P bass single coil sound. Anytime he writes a song, the bass is most likely happening like that in his ear. So number one, that's just about him. Like, and it's important for you as a collaborator, if you're the bass player, and as a side person, to any extent, to really get inside the head of your collaborator, and perhaps band leader. So I know that about Aaron. We went into the studio. I brought my stuff just in case. I think it's just good practice, but the instrument that we were going to play this song on was going to be very important. So studio had a P bass and it had a Gibson Ripper. We tried everything. P bass was the right move, no doubt. That P bass had, I think, really old round wound strings on it. Although this bass that I have has flat wound strings on it. New flat wounds to me sound almost like a really old, unclean round wound string. But they did have really old round wounds on them. We got the instrument. It was P bass. So that's step one. Once we figured that out, we did a mixture of live tracking and overdubbing. And we were lucky to have Nate Smith in the studio playing drums. So we live tracked a little bit with Nate. Nate is not in our band, but since I play with Aaron all the time, it was really helpful to have me and Aaron play with Nate at the same time, to give our feeling of what the swing of this song was, the way that we'd rehearsed it, and the way I learned it from Aaron, and the way it just developed into a song at that point. So in the studio, we were on the other side of the glass from Nate, and once Nate started playing the drums, though, we were really subject to his incredibly magnetic feel of swing, and it's still pretty hard, maybe not hard, but like unfamiliar to play to his drumming. I like that. My favorite word to describe that is magnetic. It's very magnetic to play to. Once you can get the feeling of like it's inside the little notes, there's a swing to it, and we'll talk about groove later, but yeah. P bass, live tracking with Nate. Anything that didn't feel good after the live tracking, we went back and overdubbed with the same gear. It's simple. We did not use a foam in the bridge, even though for this type of music and for this aesthetic, it's really popular to do that. The strings were old enough that we didn't need to. But if they were a little snappy and if they were a little bright sounding, we probably would have. We had it there ready, and that's a good tip for anybody going in the studio to track some bass is be prepared for almost everything, just bring sponges, bring different types of muting. It's really important. It brings me to my next thing I wanted to talk about, which was string muting. So when I play this song, the first thing I'm thinking about before I start the song is control your left hand muting. Control your left hand muting. Sympathetic vibrations on an electric bass, when they are unmasked and when they're amplified and when they're exposed in the studio, they can ruin a track. They really can, and they can ruin a live performance. That is one of the biggest things I've learned by playing with Aaron. You need space. Like, you need to just occupy your space and be very happy with that, and don't have open strings ringing out while you're trying to play. When I play this G, the open G is going to also sympathetically vibrate. And when that G sympathetically vibrates, it's going to produce a small D harmonic, and that's going to make my D string vibrate a little bit, as well as D being the fifth of the low G anyway. So your bass, just from playing a G, has just gone into a huge shockwave of vibration. So you got to stop it and you have to control it so that only the low G happens. And I do that all the time with a little bit of barring. I'm not pressing every note down. I just touch my finger to all the strings, and it usually takes care of it. It's really helpful for non-playing fingers to also just sit on a string. if they're not playing. The difference between them being on and off the string are like this. That's them off, that's them on. So sometimes you can't tell just by looking at somebody's fingers, but for most of my playing with Aaron Rizzo, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to mute as many strings as possible. And if you're really in a bind, if you really got some groove where you're traveling up and down, or there's barring and there's fourths and there's other things, you can go into some right hand muting too. And we'll get there in a second. But left hand muting. When that G stops, I only want the fretted note to sound. I do not want the sympathetic vibration of the open G. I don't want any of that stuff. I can't stress that enough. If I let C, if I play C, hear that? There's so many notes that are ringing out, so we really have to control them throughout the whole thing. E flat is sometimes it's going to produce that G harmonic too, but anything we play. So important. All right, so we talked about gear and we talked about string muting, a lot of left hand stuff. Sympathetic vibrations are a no-no. The next thing we could talk about is the right hand. So the right hand still can be in charge of a lot of muting, like I mentioned, but I think its main function is to control the spectrum of sound that you create. When I have my hand farther from the bridge or closer to the bridge, that's going to determine how warm or how bright my sound is. And that is a very important choice when you're recording and when you're tracking. It's got to be on the top of the list, I think. So that sounds like a certain way. That sounds like a certain way. That sounds a certain way. That's with one finger. If I change fingers, whoa, different, different, different. Every finger sounds different. Every placement, closer or farther away from the bridge, sounds different. And they need to be figured out. They need to be figured out before you get into the studio to record it. And it's perfectly fine to mess with it while you're tracking, because you might expect something, but you show up to work and then, oh, you know what? Like, this sounds a little too dubby, like a little very flat sounding. Maybe add a finger to it. Ah, okay, now there's some brightness in my finger. Those are my favorite moments in the studio, is like finding out my expectations were subverted. So the beginning of the song, I play. I want my sound to be very articulate. I'm taking care of the left hand muting, but I just need something that's gonna cut through the mix a little bit and establish, hey, the whole band is here. Check us out. Peep this groove. Then, when Aaron starts singing, you'll notice I went instantly to the palm mute. That really cuts the sustain of my note so that it's not this like this dubby frequency that's happening while the singer is singing. I want you to focus on the singer. I don't want you to focus on me. I want to support the singer. So, nice and super crisp, short notes. They don't have a long life. But depending on what finger I use will determine how warm or how bright the articulation is. So that sounds like something, but that sounds completely different. Again, that's that world of the palm muting and all these choices I really learned from Pino Palladino and Sean Hurley, that world of bass players. That's what they do, that's what they're known for, that's what they're hired for. That Pino thing, where he's sticking that thumb out as far as he can get, because you're muting that string But if you're really close, it's just too bright most of the time. So get that thumb right nice and out there while you're palm muting. Really important to the song. So we're really open, and then we palm mute. We got a pre-chorus where I let the note really bloom, super bell tone feeling. And most of the time I do that with my thumb because the thumb's got the most flesh on it. It's gonna get me the absolute flattest, warmest sound. There's so much sustain with that note. And there's something about sending the string in motion with a downward stroke versus coming up, pluck up. Sounds like something, and that sounds like something else. We use it a lot in orchestral playing too, when you're in the orchestra. So sometimes I do that, and then as I sense the song rising, all of a sudden the hi-hat opens up a little bit. I might play the same note, but I might just give it a little first finger action here. Super, super, super subtle. Back to the fingers, because now we're heading right in. Boom, we're off the launch pad. Now we're back. So those are the big, big, big right hand techniques. Our finger style in a very neutral location, not something too Beatlesy but not too Jaco Pastorius. No, I think right over the pickup area. You'd have to experiment on your own instrument, but that's where we like it for this song and songs like this. And then we hop down, palm mute up here above the pickup, nice warm bell tone. All right, let's talk about some harmony in this song. So this song is in G minor. And we live around the 3rd fret of the bass. But there's a lot of C major chords in the song, major 4, and it has a flat 7 in it, or a dominant 7th. So when I play, that's all we're highlighting is the 4 there, and most of the band is playing major 4 to a minor, G minor. So most of the song is in G Dorian, because an E natural would mean that we're in G Dorian. One of my favorite things about this song, though, is the modal mixture that occurs when we have these little moments of like the pre-chorus and the second half of the chorus, where we go to an E flat chord. Because if we're in G Dorian, we're playing C7, there's E naturals all day, but then all of a sudden we land on a E flat major chord. So woo, we just got rocked into a whole different sound world. It's one of my favorite parts about the song. So we have to be very aware of that. You know, the bass player's job is certainly groove, texture, but we got to hold down the harmony too. So we got to know when we're in C minor, E flat, and then we go, and then we're back. Yeah. All right, now that we've covered the gear and the vibrations in the bass and the string muting and right hand techniques and groove and paying attention to your drummer and being a good collaborator and then knowing the changes to the song and the harmony, now it's time to decide, what the hell do I actually play? What do I actually play for my part in this song? So what's my content going to be? And for me, when I play with, at least with Aaron, I follow a mantra that he once said, although he fondly says that he doesn't remember saying this, which is why I love him. But he once said, there's nothing louder than subtlety. And it's probably the greatest mantra to follow as a 21st century bass player. What happens if you just start out as your neutral concept as just playing the bass notes? Just the simplest bass line you can get. No extra rhythms, no extra fills and no nothing. Like, how simple can you present something to, you know, your band leader or the artist you're working for? And let's just say for this song, it's 3 beats of G and then the 4th beat is C. That's the simplest bass line I can have. So at that point, he might say, all right, you know, well, that long of a note is kind of annoying, so why don't you follow the guitar riff, which goes... So I think in this song, I just ended up copying the guitar part. That's what feels the best to everybody. I gotta be careful, because sometimes I put in these little ghost notes, and sometimes they do not add to the groove. I have to be very aware of what the bass drum is playing. And that's another personal obsession, is how close can I get my bass part to fit in with the kick drum. That's one of my favorite little mental projects, is like when everybody else is talking about other aspects of the song, I'm kind of sitting there, I'm going like, how close can I fit that in with the bass drum? But yeah, also like show all the chord changes and, you know, be very supportive. But so if I can match the kick drum and, you know, present the harmony in the most simplest way, that's it. Every time, most of the people I play with, they love that. So for this song, it sounds like that. You don't hear me playing like I don't think that would fit well with this song. I think it would be distracting, and we have to identify, again from the beginning, what is my role? My role is to be the bassist in this song. I need to support the vocal and contribute to the song in not only the best way that the artist feels, but something that I can feel proud that I was a small piece of glue to this whole thing. It's the idea of, like, if you contribute something small from yourself and you and a bunch of other people are contributing small pieces of themselves to create something big, that thing is almost always bigger than any one of you could do alone. So that's my mantra. There's nothing louder than subtlety. So just be subtle. You can't go wrong with that. And people will tell you if they want more, if they want a busier track. Most of the track, I'm just playing. And even the fills are just very eighth note-y. Big drawn out long sections. I'm not playing bass chords. We're not doing any of that. We're just playing single note, because it makes you pay attention to the vocal line. If that happens, I did my job. That's great. At the end of the song, on my recent pass through, I know I did a little... that's not what ended up being on the track. At that moment, I just play like another one of these things. That was just me having fun here in my room during quarantine. But, yeah, I would probably never play that in a track. Most likely. Unless it was some like fun track that is obviously not intended to be on a radio or in playlists, and it's just like a self-expressive kind of thing. Yeah, then you can throw in... or... I don't know. But none of that stuff is going to fly, I think, when you're just tracking bass for a song like this. All right, so I think we covered everything from gear to string muting, right-hand techniques, groove, harmony, and content, and all of those things combined make up what you heard. And all those things were decided pretty slowly in the studio. You take things section by section. Sometimes, again, we live tracked, so we listened back and go, that doesn't feel too tight, or that note's too long there. Like, let me go in and do that section again. Like, hey T, what if you did that section all palm muted? Yeah, that's a good idea. Like, that'd be really good. Those decisions and the collaborative process happen if you've done your homework. And the homework is figuring out all these things. So I hope that was fun. I hope this illuminates a little bit of part of a process to make a song like that. And yeah, happy quarantine, everybody. More videos to come.